I was just going to leave you hanging there for a while.
That's fine. You know how much I love to have my face out on the internet all by myself.
Well, again, there's so much stuff under there. I was like, I got to find myself. Where am I? Yeah, well, at some point, maybe we'll have enough money to do, like, have a producer. Wouldn't that be cool?
Hey, there you go.
I know, it'd be really cool instead of me having to be the producer, and then we could have somebody who's actually proficient.
Yeah, but then we'd miss all the follies and all the little laughs and all the, oh, here goes Jenny again with the clips and all that stuff.
Oh, so speaking of Jenny with the clips, shall we begin this morning, Michael?
Here we go. Here we go.
All right, so let's start off this morning because I'm going to have to get off of here at 9:45 today, and Mr. Grande is going to be finishing the show, and we will have on our guests here in just a little bit. But before we do that, we just thought we'd cover a few topics in the news because, you know, why not?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you this morning a little bit, and I'm going to show you. Let's do this one first just because it's fun. All right, so let me pull this one in. Maybe where did my screen go? There it is. Okay, there it is. All right, so here is our first little topic for the day. And this little topic is just a little thing from Oklahoma Voice. And Oklahoma Voice had, let's see, where are we? Here we are. Okay, so basically it's just Governor Stitt signs bills on ranked choice voting, poll worker incentives, and others. And it just kind of gives an overview of what's gone on and what he signed. So he signed a bill that makes erecting homeless camps on public property a misdemeanor punishable by a fine because people who are homeless have $50. I'm sorry. I just thought that was kind of asinine. I mean, like picking them up and having them go to a shelter, you know, having them stay there instead of on the street, you know, that seemed like a better idea. But $50 or then 15 days in jail.
Well, are they just supposed to pay on the spot with what they have? Or are they supposed to go to court? I mean, they got to
well, now that I don't know. And that's an excellent point because I have not read the bill. I'm just reading what, you know, the paper has covered here. And then it says Senate Bill 1452 authorizes an exemption from taxable income of $100 for each day an employer provides paid leave to an employee to serve as a poll worker beginning in tax year 2025. Now I'm going to read you a little clip from our state election board chairman. Election officials are grateful to the legislature and the governor providing a new tool for recruiting and retaining poll workers, which continues to be a struggle in many counties across the state, said Oklahoma State Election Board Secretary Paul Ziriaks. Poll workers are the backbone of our democracy. Our hope is this new law will incentivize employers to provide time off for employees to serve as poll workers. What's wrong with that? So
doesn't sound like anything's wrong with that. I mean, why would something be wrong with that?
Poll workers are the backbone of our democracy, says the Oklahoma State Election Board Secretary. I'm not sure. Hey, I just hate to do this to you, Michael, and put you on the spot. But what is our form of government again?
Well, I mean, are we talking theoretically? Or are we talking actual? I mean,
No, you make an excellent point. Let's go to documentary. So, according to the Constitution, what is the form of our government?
Well, we should be a free republic.
So, not a democracy then?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a democracy is just ruled by the majority.
Yeah. So that's what we're doing right now then.
Well, I think that was probably just a little typo.
You think
Actually,
it's a typo?
yeah.
Or do you think, considering the fact that they actually asked him this question and he returned this statement by using the term democracy, maybe he's unclear?
Well,
I mean, I'm just asking, maybe. All right, so that's that. So let's do another one. We'll just keep sharing the screen here for just a little bit. So we'll cover a couple of topics here. All right, so here's another one this morning. This one is coming soon. Kickapoo Travel Plaza OTA plans auction for 273 acres in 7 Oklahoma counties. So we have some friends from Pykoff OTA who are going to be going to this. And I think it's going to be very interesting. I think it might be interesting to find out who's buying this property. I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I don't know, but maybe it would be interesting to see who in Oklahoma is buying OTA property. So if you want to do this, this is going to be, this is Dakel. It will be 28 parcels are for sale in 7 counties: Oklahoma, Pawnee, Creek, Tulsa, Wagner, Grady, and Craig. 10 a.m. Thursday at Dakel Auctioneers, 200 Northwest 114th Street. Registration will begin at 9 a.m.
There we go.
There you go. Okay, so let's continue on with our screen sharing. Isn't this exciting this morning? We haven't done this much screen sharing in a while. All right. So here's another one that I thought was interesting. I just pulled it out, thought I'd mention it. Oh, goodness. 14-year-old dead, 4 others injured in sword stabbing attack. This is in London.
Well,
Okay.
see, I mean, I know where you're going with this, but I think the issue is, Jenny, I mean, that's a sword attack. So that's, I mean, I know that they can't have guns, so they have knives, but I guess whoever has the biggest knife basically wins.
Well, this is a sword. That's a pretty big knife.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, I mean, I feel horrible. This poor 14-year-old girl was killed. But the point of the matter is, if you keep guns out of people, then they'll find another way to kill each other. And don't forget, Kate killed Abel with a rock.
I'll tell you a real quick story. My daughter's soccer coach, you know, he's one of these guys from England. He came over and we were somewhere with him. I can't remember what the scenario was. This like 10 years ago. You know, we had our concealed carry guns with us, and he was talking about that. You know, he's uncomfortable because we have guns over here and this and that. And my wife just goes, how many people get stabbed over in England? And then he like didn't even make the connection until she said that. And then he's like, yeah, okay. And then after that, he went out and got himself a gun.
That's fascinating. Truly, it is. These people. Okay, so let's keep going. We've got, that was actually a pretty good story. All right, we've got more to go through. All right, so there were 2 things. You know, we talked about this the other day, and I'll pull this in.
And if I can make one more point real quick on the whole gun deal, all a gun does, I mean, more so than a knife or anything else, all a gun does in self-defense is give you the opportunity to negotiate. You know, if you're a small woman or someone that's, you know, you can't protect yourself, you're not some big, you know, burly guy, there's 4 or 5 people surrounding you. With a gun, now you have the ability to negotiate. A knife, no way. You're still going to get attacked. You can't stop anybody.
Well, and they have to get too close to you.
Yeah, with a gun, you can say, hey, guys, you've got your gun out. You say, hey guys, I think this is a bad idea. Just walk away. I don't want anything to happen. That's what'll happen.
Yep. I mean,
throw that in there quick.
You're 100% correct. And thank you for throwing that in there. All right. So let's look at this briefly. Zumwalt withdraws from governor's cabinet, continues as tourism department. Okay. Now I want to make a point. This says Zumwalt. This is Oklahoma Voice. Zumwalt withdraws from governor's cabinet. All right. And then it goes on to basically say, seeking to eliminate any distractions from her public service, the governor's tourism secretary, Shelley Zumwalt, has withdrawn from her cabinet position, but will continue on as state agency director. So I just want to stop sharing that screen for just a second and then share this one because I thought this was really interesting. All right, so now you have another one that is from the Oklahoman that I'll pull up here. And the Oklahoman article basically says this. Governor Kevin Stitt withdraws Shelley Zumwalt's nomination for cabinet secretary post. So is it both? Or how does that work? So this is the Oklahoman, and it says here, and it actually shows a picture of the filed Governor Stitt notice that has withdrawn the nomination for Shelley Zumwalt to the cabinet, essentially. So this one in the Oklahoman says that the governor did it. But then if you go and you look at the other one, it says that Zumwalt did it. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting thing. But the bottom line here is that our state auditor found that Shelley Zumwalt, as tourism director, and wasn't it OMS? Because I'm trying to remember, she was, in so many different places, basically found that she was doing business as the head of that agency with a software organization for which her husband was vice president. Mm-hmm. And then you had Governor Stitt, who came out and said,
kind of in a no bid contract situation. That's what it looked like.
Yeah. And then Governor Stitt comes out and says, well, she is not going to resign. This was known about at the beginning.
Yeah.
So Governor Stitt basically comes out and says, sure, I have no ethics either. I mean, I just wanted her in the position and we just wanted to get this done and we're going to get it done. And this was just the best way to do it because there are no other software companies in America or Oklahoma that could do that job.
Yeah. It probably is pretty specific, Jenny.
Yeah, and I know
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They needed the insider connections and knowledge to really be able to write the correct code to do that process.
Yeah. I think as taxpayers, we should be kind of PO'd about this, frankly. I mean, I really do. I mean, okay, so her husband is the vice president of a software company. That's great. Don't do business with that software company. Find another one. And then to double down.
That's just what we see, though, across the board with government. I mean, these politicians enrich themselves through the private sector, whether it's coming from insider knowledge and stocks and bonds to company deals to
stocks and bonds. Yes, for sure.
I mean, that should be 100% illegal. I mean, no politician should have any type of brokerage account. I mean, if you're going to serve as a politician, you serve as a politician. You put that side away, and you don't have access to because you've got very finite access to information that is going to lead to large public investment down the road, and you should ethically take yourself out of that situation if you're going to serve. But as we see, these people get into government so they can enrich themselves.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't have all of these people in the federal government. How many of those have been I'm called out. They prop nothing. I mean, I don't think anything happened to Nancy Pelosi, and they essentially proved she bought, I don't know how many stocks ahead of some kind of law or whatever. They never do anything to these people. Stop it.
But they'll put Martha Stewart in jail.
They what?
I said, but they'll put Martha Stewart in jail.
She didn't have enough political power, apparently.
Throw the book at Martha.
That's true. You're right about that.
Well, and
any of the rest of us.
Yeah.
You know,
and you see that all the way down to these city councils. You got all the developers, all these guys that have, massive real estate stakes within the city. They're all on the city council. They're the ones doing all the propositions. They know where all the buildings going to be in 5 to 10 years. I mean, come on.
Didn't we talk to the McLean County assessor who was like, oh my gosh. And then the guy who is the developer of all of the bonds at the school sits on the school board. Yeah. Oh, well, duh. Why wouldn't you? I mean, let's just rate that in.
Yeah.
I mean, it's shocking to me. I mean, we don't do ethics or anything in school because we're doing so many other things. However, we should.
We can't do ethics because we're doing feeling buddies, Jenny. We gotta. We have to get our little dolls and talk to them and tell them how we feel and all that good stuff.
I'm embarrassed. You're right. You are so right, and I'm completely about that. Yes. So let me hit something else. So that's a couple of them that I wanted to hit, but I want to hit this one now. So let me see if we can get that. Okay. So here we are. This is Governor Stitt. This is from Oklahoma Voice. Governor Stitt signs controversial Oklahoma immigration bill. Okay, so Barbara Obrock, who's been around for a long time, basically talks about House Bill 4156. So it would create a new crime called impermissible occupation for willfully entering the state without legal authorization to be in the United States. The first offense is punishable by either 1 year in a county jail and a fine of up to $500 or both, and the person would be required to leave the state within 72 hours. A second offense is a felony with up to 2 years in prison and a fine of $1,000 or both. Okay. Stitt said he was disappointed the bill was necessary. So let's keep that in our head. All right. And then I'm going to actually flip over to something else. Now I'm going to flip over to this. So this is a Twitter post from a man named Chris Brewster, who is the superintendent of Santa Fe High School and the Santa Fe South. Now it's a whole bunch of different, I think it's elementary, middle, and high school. But back in the day, it started out, I think, as just a high school, if I remember correctly. And I actually had a friend who went to work for Chris Brewster, said he was, a great guy. She really liked him. So that was back in early 2000s. So he's been around literally for quite some time at Santa Fe South. Okay. So I had this tip to me this morning too. He tweets or X's, whatever you want to call it now. I am deeply disappointed with our governor and legislature. I have never been ashamed to be an Oklahoman until today. HB 4156 should never have been law. I am heartsick. All right. Well, so some lady, Leslie's Unique Crafts, goes, so leave. We don't want you here anyway. Just get out of here. Okay. He goes, do you know me? So he's trying to be, like a little jerky, right? He's like, so you know me? You're going to tell me to get out of here, right? So I couldn't help. I couldn't help myself. I mean, I just couldn't help it. I said, you've made yourself known. You've made it known that you object to a law to help to stem the tide of people entering this state illegally. You've made yourself known as one who is not interested in the rule of law. This should upset and even anger many lawful citizens. But I went on. The fact that you actually nearly raise kids in this state while you yourself possess an attitude of unlawfulness should be concerning to any taxpayer, citizen, or any parent attempting to raise up or bring their children up with respect for the law. I think as a taxpayer, we should have his job. We should just have him removed from his job, because if he is going to promote unlawfulness, if he loves illegality so much,
Yeah.
he should be absolutely disqualified from being in charge of any children anywhere. Because at some point in time, we actually are built, this nation was built on the rule of law. That's how it was. We don't live in a democracy, Paul Ziriax. We live in a republic. And that was the combination of law with the Constitution, the law being there to back up what was written in the Constitution. And that was supposed to promote justice and ensure domestic tranquility. But right now, I don't have domestic tranquility.
And protect
I want
our
to
liberty.
actually strangle somebody, because I'm sick to death of these people and their little bleeding hearts and but I don't care if it's illegal. You're hurting people. Well, guess what? If you come into this country illegally and you drag your children into this country, or worse, you have children in this country after you're here illegally, that's not your child's fault. Absolutely not. But guess what? It is the parent's fault. You are responsible. You're out of here. I'm going to be the umpire for the state. You're out of here.
Hey, I have no qualms.
I am done with this nonsense. And
Well,
Chris Brewster should be fired for promoting illegality, for promoting lawlessness. He should be fired.
Well,
I don't want
I'd like
pay
to
his damn
see,
salary.
Jenny, I'd like to see Mr. Brewster's track record, his bleeding heart track record of how many people he's housed himself over the last 10, 20, 30 years.
Maybe we should ask him.
Yeah. How many people has he helped? You know, how many mission trips has he gone on? You know, what is this guy's contribution to the immigration of people coming to this country? You know, what has he done? You know, how much blood, sweat, and tears has he put into helping these people? And I say that, and I can say that because I'm literally first generation American. My dad's entire family came over here from Italy. My mom's entire family came over here from Germany, and they had to go through the process. They became U.S. citizens. They were quarantined. They did the entire process. My grandfather's name is in the books at Ellis Island. We went there. We saw where he stood on the steps, the whole 9 yards.
I adopted 2 children from Africa. It cost me over $25,000 to get them here legally.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, all you need are a pair of fence snippers and you're in.
Yeah. And what are we doing? Why are we defending all these other countries? Why are we sending hundreds of billions of dollars for other countries to protect their borders? Well, I mean,
because the flat bottom line is we've got to ruin the middle class. We've got to force people like you and me to pay for all of this stupid ass nonsense. Sorry, I'm losing it this morning. But I could not even believe it. And I want to know who's going to fire him. I want to know if Ryan Walters wants to stand up and fire this guy. I suggest we do. How many superintendents do we need to have across the state that just promote lawlessness? That just say, you know what? I don't care if they're illegal or not. They're kids. I don't care. What's the next thing that it's okay to be illegal because they're kids? Yeah. What is the next thing?
Well, I'll dovetail on that, Jenny. How many superintendents do we even need in this state?
Oh, that's another good
Are we
point.
that inept at the admin level that you got to have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of superintendents at every single little independent school district? I mean, come on.
But Michael, are you crazy? Who would pay for COSA then? Who would pay dues to COSA then? We can't not have all of these superintendents because we wouldn't create the monster that is COSA. We couldn't have all of these school board members so we could empower OSSBA. Yeah. I mean, don't forget, it's always about the groups. It's never about the individuals.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go, because I'm not finished ranting. So hang on,
I won't
more
interrupt you
ranting
again. We'll just
coming.
let you go. We'll just
All right.
let you go.
So let's share another tab because I'd like to talk about this tab. So our governor signs the, here's the tab. So our governor signs this, and then this, I got this morning. Basically, this is an executive order that was filed yesterday. The bill was signed yesterday. So at the same time, initially, he files an executive order. I recently signed House Bill 4156 into law as a direct result of the unprecedented border security crisis that has seen more than 52,000 Chinese nationals, along with terror organizations, illegally infiltrate and wreak havoc on our nation state due to Biden's administrative complete failure to offer even minimal protections. So let's just start out. So it's mainly Chinese? No, you guys did the whole marijuana thing. That was a big door opener for the Chinese to come in. So don't put it off on that. That's absolutely ridiculous. You don't want to say about all of the Hispanics that are coming over here illegally. Somehow we don't even want to touch that situation. All right. So he goes on and he says, whereas that it's not aimed, this bill is not aimed at the honest, hardworking Hispanic. How are you honest? How are you honest if you're here illegally?
Yeah.
Can you give me an answer to that question? So Governor Stitt, I want an answer to that question. You're welcome to come on here at any time. You tell me, how do you have an honest, hardworking Hispanic or anybody who is here illegally? Illegality and honesty are not the same. They're actually divergent. Isn't that interesting? They're completely opposite. So, whereas the federal
Jenny, don't
government
be a
has
buzzkill. We're helping people. Come on.
has
These are all they're not illegal immigrants, Jenny. These are all refugees. They're all fleeing, and they're all refugees. That's what it is.
Yeah, but here we're going to find out exactly what the deal is. So don't ever forget that our governor is mainly concerned about businesses, right? That's why the Chamber of Commerce loves him, loves him, loves him. It's business, business, business all the time, right? So, has refused to issue work permits unless and until the federal administration functions as designed. We, that means Oklahoma, must do our part to discover and provide pathways for migrant workers to legitimately contribute to our state without fear of being separated from their families and livelihoods. So basically, we played this game. The governor giveth and the governor taketh away. So he's signed this bill, and yet on the other hand, he wants to create a task force to make sure that the illegals that are here already get to stay here legally.
Yeah.
We're providing them a pathway to citizenship after they've already stormed the border and they're in here and they're doing their work illegally. Now, let me make another point. I have kids that need jobs. They're actually legal citizens that live here in Oklahoma. Isn't that freaking weird?
Yeah.
They would like to have jobs. How are we going to compete for jobs for people with people who are here illegally, but they're honest, even though they're here illegally. But we need to figure a way to get them a path to citizenship. People in Oklahoma, we're done being a red state. We have a governor that's more interested in, and this is clear. So if you want to go look this up, please, I'm not making this up. This was filed. It was filed yesterday. You can go look it up. He puts all of the executive orders that are out there so everybody can see them. I'm absolutely so mad that my hair is on fire.
Hey, you know what? And he's expanding government more by creating another task force. But I like to play on words here, Jenny. You know what all these task forces remind me of? Remember when Obama was in office and he had all these czars? He had a czar for everything. It's like the same playbook.
Mm-hmm. It sure is. I mean, our governor has a task force for everything. I mean, we had a task force for election integrity. I'm still trying to figure out what any of that did or anything. But I think the thing that bothers me the most about that whole bit of just absolute nonsense, This is not meant to hurt the people, the honest, hard-working, illegal aliens. But he wouldn't put that. They're called migrant workers. I'm absolutely, and I forgot to mention, do you know who's on the task force?
No.
The person who runs the Mexican consul in Oklahoma. Remember, we have a Mexican consul in Oklahoma. Why do we have a Mexican consul? It's Oklahoma. We're not in Mexico. We don't have a, we're not like a border town or someplace where you have to have a or United or Washington D.C. where we have to have some kind of an embassy. We're not that. Why do we have a Mexican consul?
Yeah. Well, and what a slap in the face to every immigrant that has come into this country, into this state, legally built a business, is a good tax-paying, rule-following, law-abiding Oklahoman. What a slap in the face.
I just honestly, at this point, I think to myself, what do you do? I mean, this is so ridiculous. You would think that our governor would come out and say, hey, I signed this law. This is going to be the way it is. We're just moving on down the road.
It's got to get worse, Jenny. It's gonna. I mean, until the herd, the masses, like actually get so upset that when we do have a rally, like when Mick has the rally down at the Capitol, you don't have just 50 or 100 or a couple hundred or even 300. You've got 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people that show up. I mean, we've got to get to the point to where that scale tips in the other direction, and you've got so many people that are so upset with just how government operates. I mean, but it's going to, honestly, I think it's going to have to get a lot worse. It's just going to have to go there, unfortunately.
Well, and I think, people still think we live in a red state. That's not a red state.
No.
And you've got the secretary of the election board calling this a democracy. How do we have the person in charge of our voting who doesn't have a clue? He should have said, it should have been the first thing that pops right off the top of your tongue, Republic. It just should have, if you know anything about government. And you would hope that somebody who is in charge of the voting apparatus in the state of Oklahoma would know something about government. I mean,
well, I think we're at the point, it's complete uniparty. It's the government against the people, no matter what color you are, what side you say you're on. I mean, you either believe in liberty and protecting our liberty and freedom, or you believe in growing government. I mean, that's where I'm at.
Well, we're going to talk more on Friday because I want to make sure that we have a chance to get on our guests this morning. And like I said, unfortunately, I've got to be off. But I do want to point out that on Friday, we're going to talk about this new chaplain bill. It has not been signed into law. It hasn't been passed by the Senate yet, but there is a new bill out to allow Christian chaplains into public schools. And basically, as we would have figured, the Satanic Temple has come out and said, you do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do it, because I'll sue you to put a satanic chaplain in there too. So again, these people, I don't know. I don't know if they're just really honestly completely dumb, or if they really are participating in the destruction of Oklahoma and the destruction of our country. Because when you do dopey stuff that allows bad things to happen, you're either one or the other. All right, so let's bring on our guests for today.
Sorry, ladies. Jenny went on a rant for 30 minutes. Sorry.
I'm going to bring you on, Mick. Good morning, Mick. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. No, I love the rants. I do them often.
Well, it's a sad thing that we have to do them. I don't think we lost a few viewers because I was like on this rant, but I mean, I don't know why people don't understand why this is such a bad deal, but I think maybe after we talk to you for a little bit, then people might be able to understand. So Mick, tell me about the person who's on with you, and we'll bring her on.
Okay, so Gina Demerith is a homeschool mom, but she is also she was a Navy officer and a librarian, and she wrote this resolution, and it was against the World Health Organization having jurisdiction over us, and she sent it to when the counties were having their conventions. And she sent me a copy, and I was like, yeah, right on. Love it. And so I had connected with Dr. Meryl Nass, who is really fighting against the World Health Organization. And she's connected with Frank Gaffney and Sovereignty Coalition. And anyhow, so we formed together where we said, you know what? We have to, she looked at the drafts. I was reading all these articles and looking at what was happening in our state. And we said, hey, we've got to have some health sovereignty in the state of Oklahoma, because as you pointed out, we are so conservative that, we should be able to pass this kind of legislation and protect Oklahomans. So anyhow, we got together, we formed a group on Signal, and a group of us concerned citizens have come together with the resolution that Dr. Meryl Nass put out, and the resolutions that were passed by the county commissioners. I'm sorry, not county commissioners, conventions, county conventions. That's going to be brought to the state. And but Gina's also been working with county commissioners, and we went down there to say, hey, look, let's put this resolution in place. Let's have some protection. And we found some champions who said, resolution, yeah, right on, but let's get some legislation. Let's get a little teeth in there. And we were like, yeah, right on. So they came up with Senate Bill 426. And it passed the House 72-21. And now we are hoping to get that on the Senate floor. So that is where we're at right now.
All right. Well, let me bring Gina on.
Please do.
Hey, Gina, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Thanks.
Awesome. Okay. So tell us now, where are we now?
So right now we are fighting to get Senate Bill 426 to the floor of the Senate. We're reaching out to Senate leadership, Senator Treat, Senator McCourtney, but also Senator Daniels and Senator Paxton. We're asking people to call and email and express support for Senate Bill 426 so that we can deny the WHO, the WEF, and the UN any jurisdiction in our state.
Why, and either one of you can answer this question. Why wouldn't we want to? Why? I mean, we're a sovereign state, right? I mean, now granted, nobody believes that, but according to the Constitution, it's called the 10th Amendment. We are a sovereign state. So why would people be against this? Why would they have a problem with this?
Well, I think there's a couple reasons why people might be against it. Some of them have believed that we are a sovereign state, and they're not going to enforce this. This is just something that the World Health Organization is going to put in place, this pandemic agreement and international health regulations, and that it's not going to really be binding. But that's a falsity. And I also think that there may be some where people get maybe monies donated to them from pharmacies or from other organizations that would be, a proponent of the World Health Organization.
It's never about money. What's the matter with you?
I'm so sorry. My bad. Let me just retract all that. But I mean, those are the two big things. Follow the money, and that people have believed the propaganda that this isn't binding. But Gina can tell you, she's read the drafts, and I've read through a lot of it, and they may not say the word binding, but there's an awful lot of words like you shall. And there's an awful lot of measures that are being put in place to ensure that there is accountability from every country. And then there's also a little fact that the Biden administration has already put their strategy plan in place back in April, where they are indicating that, they're going to just put these in place using words such as, these strategies are going to help us implement the international health regulations and the agreement accord, so that maybe there would be some bypassing of congressional consensus.
Well, I mean, all we have to do is look what happened during the pandemic, the COVID. I mean,
Right.
my gosh, we were forced to wear masks, basically. You were forced to get, and you've talked to us about this before, you were forced to get a vaccine to stay in the healthcare industry. I mean, and other industries. I mean, why are people even somehow remotely not thinking that this is not going to affect them?
Yeah, absolutely. Gina's done a lot of research. Gina, tell them about in the draft how it lines out that, this is binding.
Yeah, I mean, you said they might not use the term legally binding, but they actually do, especially in relation to the access and benefit sharing. They want this online collection center for all of the potential pathogens countries have to send to them, so that they can do the research and they can do the gain of function and they can develop the vaccines and they can get the money system going. It says legally binding many, many times in here. So,
well, and I hate to leave on that particular note, but Michael, I know you'll do a great job taking over for me. Ladies, thank you so much for being here today, and I will see everybody again on Friday.
Thanks, Jenny, for having us. Good to see you.
Well, what a start for Jenny there. I want to hit a couple things with you two. I think it's pretty important that people understand. I mean, when we're talking about the World Health Organization, we're talking about people that are completely unaccountable to us. There's no representation. They literally, it's just like, whatever they say, if something like this comes into our country, it's whatever they say goes, and we have no recourse. There's nothing, I mean, in my opinion, we have no recourse. There's nothing we can do about it. We have to follow whatever these international laws are that would violate our own liberties and our probably even our state protected laws here. But just kind of hit on what you see from the WHO a little bit. Each one of you can just kind of hit on just how bad an organization like that probably, most people just have no idea, how unaccountable that whole process is.
Well, we know it's created under the United Nations, and it's funded in part, at least, by the World Economic Forum. And we know their agenda is the 2030 agenda. They would have us own nothing and eat bugs and be happy about that. And so this pandemic agreement treaty really has nothing to do with health. It's just about asserting control in the name of health and safety. So that is the vehicle for getting control of us, because everyone wants to be healthy, right? We want to have health and prosperity. But so that's the hook, to get us to turn over our sovereignty. And we already saw that in COVID. So we shouldn't have blinders on with this. We should understand what this is really about. And even, they have this One Health approach, and I'll read from the draft. They define it as an integrated, unifying approach that aims to sustainably balance and optimize the health of people, animals, and ecosystems. So they're not just worried about people. They're really, calling in the environment. And in previous drafts, they actually ask countries, not ask, but tell them that they need to take action on climate change. And so, there's nothing stopping them through this agreement treaty to name climate crisis or gun violence as a pandemic.
Yeah. Well,
And let's not forget, Michael, that these people are not medical professionals. They are not people who did any kind of time in the hospital where they are actually really knowledgeable about the anatomy, physiology, and all of that, went through 8 years of medical school and the internships. These are globalist elites. They are unelected people who are going to then be able to dictate to us what we put in our bodies and what we do with our bodies. And one of the things that I have been saying, and I know Gina's been saying it too, and our whole group, is that we are sovereign. Our rights are given to us by our Creator. We have the right to say what goes in our body and what is being done. And if this is put into place, then those words, agreement and accord, are a very tricky mixture of language and narrative in order for them to just say, okay, we don't need congressional consensus. We don't need anybody to ratify this. We just need you to do it. And how much did we see during COVID where people just said, oh, okay, trust the science, yes. And without thinking, the next thing you know, they can tie that pandemic because they use words like likely to or possibly could, to engage a pandemic crisis that could include poverty, gun violence, climate change, or health, whatever they deem a health crisis.
Well, and I think that's a key here, Mick, is all these things may start out as good intentioned, innocent, whatever, they're doing it for the people. We need a better organized governing body to make more rational, quicker decisions, on our behalf. But that's it. It's getting their foot in the door. And then now, because we've all agreed, they're unaccountable to us. What's going to happen when a year or two or the next pandemic or the next whatever happens, and then they start ensuing or inciting martial law or this rule or that rule or whatever, the entire thing just completely warps into all these other rules and laws and things we have to follow and do. I mean, that's what people don't understand is the foot in the door is the main problem here. We cannot allow them to come into and we can't comply with what they're doing because it's just another control mechanism right on top of that.
Can I just say this, and I want Gina to be able to drop in too, but one of the things that I think people should understand is that there are measures in this accord and the international health regulations, because they're two documents that'll come together. They have in their emergency use authorization,
there you go.
EUAs. And the reason why we know that is because that is the mechanism that was used during COVID when they were putting the vaccines in place and they were mandating, and they said, well, it's emergency use. So there is not recommendations, but there are measures in order to put those in place. And I want everybody to understand too, that we are still under an emergency use authorization for COVID until December of 2024. And then Marburg, and I want to say monkeypox, but it could be something different than that. But Marburg up until the year 2028. So those emergency use authorizations are put in place. And who has control over that? Secretary Bashara, the Health and Human Secretary, the Health and Human Services Secretary of the United States. If he says, oh, COVID's up, we got to start those lockdowns and those mandates and put them in process, he has that absolute authority. And that's not my words. You can look it up.
Yeah. Gina, you want to chime in on that?
Please.
Sure. I was going to chime in on when you said, trust the science. And that is actually in the draft under Article 18, Communication and Public Awareness. It says the parties shall, as appropriate, promote and or conduct research and inform policies on factors that hinder or strengthen adherence to public health and social measures in a pandemic, as well as trust in science and public health institutions and agencies. And this trust the science,
Yeah.
that's not a thing. You don't
Yeah.
trust science, you question science. And that's how it continues to develop, and how we learn new things is by questioning, previously held, theories. And so it's very frightening to think that this is in the pandemic treaty, is that we must trust the science, when we've already learned that has not gone well. So, and Biden is ready to sign this, he's ready to do it.
When I think that's somewhat the smoking gun in this whole thing is, science should always be there to disprove. They put things out there like the scientific method with Dr. Francis Pop. That was all created to where you create this hypothesis and theory, and then you take every possible way possible to disprove it, and then it becomes kind of the new norm, where we're at the point now to where you can't even question it. You can't even put out a single question, even as a doctor or a PhD type of researcher. You can't even question these doctors or scientists or Dr. Fauci or any of these organizations. If you do, they remove you from social media.
Yeah, right. And that's in the agreement as well. They call out countries to take action against mis and disinformation. And of course, the WHO gets to define what that is, what is true, and who the experts are. So, yeah.
Well, and I want to just one more point on the WHO, just to reiterate this. I mean, who are these people? Like you said, it Mick, they're probably just, they're not even real doctors or practicing physicians, or I mean, they're somewhat elitist or globalist type of people, but the organization itself, where does this thing even come from? How is it even funded? What is the actual health purpose, of this organization? Do you know?
Well, we know that the World Health Organization is part of the United Nations, and that came into play into 1948. So that's where the World Health Organization comes from, and they even have it on their website. They are a special agency under the United Nations. And we know that when people think about the United Nations, they think about the World Economic Forum, because the World Economic Forum back in 2020, if people remember this, they took that COVID crisis, and what they did is they kind of reorganized to make this like global governance around social issues and climate change. And remember that they came out, they called the plan the Great Reset. Well, back a year before that, the World Economic Forum and the United Nations came together, and they put a plan into place. They called it a strategic partnership. And what they did is they said, okay, we're going to implement the 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development. And so they focused on financing the 2030 Agenda. That was part of the strategic plan. They focused on climate change. They focused on digital cooperation, and they called it digital governance. Health IDs are part of that. We can get into that in a second. And then they looked at health. And what they did is they said, okay, we're going to look at threats. We're going to look at multi-stakeholder partnerships. There's a red flag. And action. And then in 2021, so you kind of get that timeline going, the World Health Assembly, because that's the forum through which the WHO, the World Health Organization, is governed. What they did is they established what they called an intergovernmental negotiating body, and they began this formulation of the pandemic agreement. It's been called an accord. It's been called a treaty. It's been called multiple language, and the 300 plus amendments to the international health regulations. So they're getting funded a ton through the UN by the World Economic Forum.
Yeah. And we know what bad players those guys are.
Yeah. And Dr. Tedros, before he became the director of the World Health Organization, he was actually the health minister in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
And if you remember Ethiopia, he was accused of covering up cholera outbreaks and crises 3 different times. And we know he also, when COVID came out, he praised China. He gave them all the accolades of how wonderful. So here's the kicker. Part of this pandemic agreement, and I don't know how it ties in, but part of that is where the countries, I guess there's 194 countries, but the countries that sign on will give 5% of their health costs, which I don't know how they're going to figure that out. And we will give that 5% to other developing countries so that they can implement these plans and this agreement in their countries as well. And one of those developing countries is China.
Imagine
Yeah.
that.
And throughout the drafts, they say the goal is equity. So not equality, not equality of opportunity, but equity, equal outcome. So,
you know, this all comes, and we can get into this as deep as you want to go, because this is something that I believe this with all my heart. You know, this is about one thing. This is about control over us at all levels, especially just our God-given rights and sovereignty here in the United States. But this mechanism, I just want to tell people, this is my opinion, but I think I'm probably right on this mechanism that they have found now through pandemics, through your health, because everyone, like you said, Gina, everyone is worried about their health. I mean, your health is what you are. I mean, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. But they have found the ultimate boogeyman of control. You know, in the past, we have known who our enemies are. You know, you've seen, you know, Nazi Germany or this or that, or the USSR or communists. You've seen your enemy. Now, in my opinion, they found the ultimate boogeyman. You've got a pandemic, you've got a virus, you've got something that's invisible, that's global, that, you know, you can't handle it yourself. You have got to have, this is just what I think, you know, the way that they spell this out. Now, the local community can't handle this outbreak. The state can't handle this outbreak. Now, even the country, the United States, we can't handle our own business. We have to have an overarching global initiative here to be able to handle this boogeyman that's going to be coming down the road. And, you know, they're only putting this in place because it is inevitable. It is coming. It's going to be put into place, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's also a way to turn us against each other, because some people will buy into it and then they will hold accountable the people who are like, no, I'm not going along with that. And they'll think that, you know, the enemies will be built within our own communities when that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah.
Well, what
kind of goes back to tribalism, right? And what they did during COVID, the disease of the unvaccinated, right? So it was vaccinated against unvaccinated.
Right.
Yeah. Well, you don't even want to get me going down the whole vaccination path. I mean, I could go for hours on that. But what do you see like within this documentation? So 426 is an attempt for us in Oklahoma to not allow the WHO control here, or what is the actual like specifics on that?
Right. So no matter what you think of the World Health Organization or any of the other global entities, this is just saying that we do not have to, we are not obligated. They do not have jurisdiction to tell us, to mandate things to us. And so that really should not be objectionable. You know, should anyone in Oklahoma want to follow the World Health Organization's advice, they can.
Yeah.
But we should not have to. And there's really no constitutional way that President Biden can turn that over to an unelected globalist body when he does not have authority over our personal health autonomy. That is not an enumerated power of his nor of Congress, and so they cannot turn that over.
Now does 426, does that kind of have protections to override like the emergency powers, even if the governor declares like a state of emergency, or I mean, do you know?
Well, what it says in here is it actually says that the World Health, and I'm going to read from the bill, The World Health Organization, the United Nations, and the World Economic Forum shall have no jurisdiction in the state of Oklahoma. And then it talks about the state, it talks about the public subdivisions, it talks about including counties, cities, towns, precincts, water districts, school districts, school administrative units, quasi-public entities shall not engage in the enforcement of or any collaboration with the enforcement of any requirement, instruction, mandates, recommendation, or guidance by the World Health Organization, United Nations, or the World Economic Forum. So it's pretty clear cut that we would be protected from these mandates, and those who shall not comply or will not comply, I'm one of them, would not have any kind of repercussions taken against them.
Yeah, well, and I think that's important because we did see during the pandemic, during the COVID pandemic, how our government agencies would just quote these bodies, that were not here locally, testing here or whatever it may be. Even our local school districts, they weren't following the State Department of Health. They were following the CDC or these other, in my opinion, rogue organizations that have an agenda in one way or another. So I think that is probably pretty covered in that bill. At least that's what it sounds like.
Well, and just so that everybody knows, in 2022, Oklahoma, along with 15 other states, sued to say that these mandates, when they came down, were unconstitutional. Yeah. And that we would not follow them. Well, then, and they sued the Biden administration, the HHS, federal HHS, and they came back and they said no. They kind of denied it. 2 states carried on, saying, we're going to send a petition. We don't want this. And it was denied for the lack of standing. It wasn't appealed. So we're really in a good position. I mean, this is something that we have already kind of breached or broached as a subject. So I think that is a good point that our legislators should understand as well, that, we've already reached out. They just said, well, you have a lack of standing. So we have the ability to appeal that.
Yeah. Well, is there any type of repercussion or enforcement for people, like if someone is trying to force like the WHO policy in? I mean, or does it even need to be addressed? But I guess the question is, if is there like an enforcement of this bill?
It says that any mandates, recommendations, now I'm reading from the bill, instructions, communications, or guidance that's issued shall not be used in the state as a basis for action, nor to direct, order, or otherwise impose, contrary to the Constitution and laws of the state of Oklahoma, any requirements whatsoever, including those for masks, vaccines, medical testing, or gathering any public or private information about the state's citizens or residents, and shall have no force or effect in the state of Oklahoma. Yeah. So
that sounds pretty comprehensive as far as, if someone is trying to impose any type of WHO standard of procedure, in the next event, that you could literally say, hey, 426 says you can't do that.
Right.
Yeah. I would also add that about a week ago, there was a press conference held in DC, and there were a handful of congressmen, and it was led by Senator Johnson, and they are pushing back on this as well at the national level. But to have more states stand up and say, this isn't happening in our state, that gives them a lot of support too. And it builds the momentum on a bigger scale.
Well, what is on the other side of this? What is the actual argument against it, and who's actually pushing back, that you see, right now?
Yeah, we were in the House when it was debated, and one of the arguments was just that it wasn't true, that sovereignty would not be turned over, but that is not, it's not refuting anything that's in the drafts, you know. So I think that there really needs to be an open dialogue about what is in the drafts, and actually the final draft has not even been released, so the Congress can't even look at what they're really talking about. So all of the information that I have is, I read the last 3 drafts. And so I'm compiling everything that was said in those drafts, because it could all be brought back into the next draft, you know, the one that they pass. So, yeah, I lost track of what the question was.
Well, just locally, you know, who's pushing back against that?
Oh, yeah, right.
Here?
Yeah, so they either say it's not true, or the UN has done great things in the past. What else did they say, Mick?
Oh, that was the big thing, was that they were like, you know, this isn't going to be binding, and they were and you know, look, this isn't a partisan issue. Just like Gina said, this should go. This is for everybody, regardless of where your political affiliation is. But what we've seen is that it seems to be the Democratic side of the aisle that is saying, you know, oh, it's not binding. Or there was one representative who said that they were sick of the lies that were being told. Well, what's happening is they are making the agreement, the pandemic agreement, very, very vague, you know, very, oh, it sounds real innocuous, you know, kind of that soft pedaling in, the little Trojan horse. It's for your safety. It's for your health. Protect grandmother. But then you've got the international health regulations. And like Gina has listed out, there is things for surveillance in there. There's things so that people can be tracked for misinformation, disinformation. You know, there's languages in there that you shall, you know, comply. There are measures in there for compliance. So, you know, there's definitely a thought process of, well, look at the agreement. It's all good. And then you look over here at the international health regulations, and that's where they put all the little snags and hooks into it. So I do want to mention, though, there are a couple states, Utah, they have language, they have a bill, and their language also says that they have state health sovereignty. It passed. It's in effect. Florida, they have a bill for state health sovereignty. Now, I don't know if they actually use the words, you know, where this is really detailed out, but it is against the World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, and the UN. And then Louisiana, which is what this bill is mimicked after, passed their Senate and is going to their House. We're pretty sure it's going to pass, but it was supposed to be done this week, and I don't know if it was or not, if it was passed in the House or not. So there are other states out there, and I think we need to fall together and say, look, we are sovereign, and again, we are sovereign. We are sovereign because those rights and that sovereignty was given to us by God. We have free will.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be imposed upon or infringed on.
Well, and I think it's important to just look at the track record of these organizations like the WHO in places like Africa, where, you know, they supposedly are helping all these people and these kids, yet the vaccines they're giving wind up sterilizing kids and having all kinds of issues. And I'll tell you something that's funny. I read this recently. And I don't know, I'm sure he's part of the World Health Organization, but it's Dr. Peter Abbey. He's like the godfather of the vaccination entire movement in Africa. So I'm sure he's part of the World Health Organization. But anyway, he recently published a paper. And I mean, this guy is like as big as you get down there. He published a paper, and he literally said that he has seen in Africa that the DTaP vaccine has a 10-fold increase of mortality compared to the kids that don't have it. So, I mean, you obviously you want to help people, as much as you can, but to me, this is just a complete measure of control. And like, I'm sure it's hard for us in the United States to imagine, because we don't live under like in Europe where they are pretty much ruled by the World Health Organization. We don't live under their surveillance systems and all their medical guidelines. And that would come into play here. Like you said, Mick, embedded in the language. And Gene, I think you touched on it too, are those things of surveillance of the environment. And I mean, it's just so bad. I mean,
Well, what we need now is we need for everyone to call, like Gina had said, Senate leadership, Senator Treat, McCourtney, Paxton, and Daniels. And we need them to call today and to ask them respectfully, but, persistently, to say directly and say, we need this legislation brought to the Senate floor. There is a huge amount of support for it from constituents, but there's also been multiple co-signers, co-authors of this bill. We're calling them the Freedom Caucus, if you will. Yeah. And so, there's a lot of them who support this, but we need our constituents to call that Senate leadership and say, please bring this bill, Senate Bill 426, to the Senate floor. And then we need the constituents to also call their senators and let them know, please be in support of this. Maybe they want to co-author the bill. That would be great.
Yeah. Well, what other states do you know who else is doing bills just like this right now?
Yeah, Utah has one,
Louisiana.
Florida has one, and then Louisiana is in process besides us.
Yeah, well, I think to me, it's just an absolute no-brainer. I mean, we can't allow anyone to impede on our own sovereignty here, especially someone outside of the United States. I mean, it's bad enough our own government imposes these things on us, but let alone an organization like the WHO.
I mean, ideally, the Constitution would protect us in and of itself. And some people argue this bill isn't needed because it's unconstitutional to even do this. And they're right. But because our federal government is just all too willing to sign us up for this tyranny, we have to take some kind of measure to protect our state and our community.
Yeah, well, I agree 100%. But in the same vein, the Constitution should have protected us during COVID, and we had to write specific rules like 658 and other rules specifically to protect, our liberty and our freedom here and our bodies, our sovereignty, our medical sovereignty ourselves to make our own decisions. So, I mean, it's sad that we've come to that place, but I agree 100%. This is a no-brainer. This has to go. This has to go through.
Yeah, before the end of this session. And I want people to know that, don't take our word for it. Go and read the drafts of the agreement and the international health regulations. They can go to, we have a website, whofighters.com, where we're posting those drafts and the bill, and we're posting all of our information. But I want people to know that on April 16th, the Biden administration, they put out their global health strategy.
Is that the right address, Mick?
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Is that the right address on the screen?
Let's see. I'm looking. Who Fighters? Yeah, that's it. Whofighters.com. Okay. Sorry, I didn't have my contacts on. I got to get real close. But people can look up what the Biden administration put in place, the global health security strategy that lines out their plan of implementation like it's a done deal, kind of like what Obama and Biden did in 2015 in the Iran nuclear deal. So, I'm going to do it like Joe Biden. This is not hyperbole, look it up.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Well, I think it's just imperative that we see this is just another arm of control coming in, and it's just, there's absolutely no need for an organization like the WHO to be here in the United States, let alone in Oklahoma in any capacity. And I can't thank you guys enough for doing what you're doing, Mick and Gina. Anything else you want to say?
Just please call your senators and call Senate leadership. We really need this passed, and not only passed, but passed this session so that we can get ahead of this pandemic agreement, treaty, whatever. We need to get ahead of it and claim our sovereignty.
Well, and let's tell everybody again, they need to contact Treat, Paxton,
McCourtney. Daniels, and McCourtney. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And their senator, their personal senator as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you, ladies.
426.
Yeah, SB426. I'll type that down here too. I can't thank you, ladies, enough. I mean, it's if I say it all the time, no one is coming to save us. We have to do it. There's no white hat army somewhere, and we can just lay down and everything's going to be okay. We have to do it, and I can't thank you enough for putting in the time and going through those documents and trying to get out, on every avenue you can get out on to let people know. Because I mean, honestly, this is the only way things are really going to change, is we have to start informing people, because if we don't do it, no one else is going to do it. No one else is they're not going to get it from the mainstream media. They're not going to get it, on other channels. So if we're not posting and sharing and doing this stuff ourselves, it is not going to happen. So I can't thank you enough, both of you, for what you're doing. And I am 100% behind this in every possible way I can be. So.
Well, we would love if Rope would put this out on their newsletter. We're going to share this interview far and wide, and everybody call Senate leadership, call your senator. SB426. Let's go. Let's get it to the floor. Health sovereignty for Oklahoma.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, ladies. Hang around for just a little bit. I want to talk to you after we're done.
Okay.
All right, well, there we go. Jenny's gone. She'll be back on Friday. And I just want to say to everybody, I mean, it's so important to realize that these are unelected, totally unaccountable people that are going to be making decisions that you have to abide by 100%, whether you want to or not, if it's deemed necessary by these people. And we saw just a very, very small little taste of a test run, in my opinion, with COVID. And we cannot allow these organizations like this to get into our government, especially our state and local governments, into our agencies that are going to be where we live with our families and our kids and our schools. We can't allow that to happen. We need to have our own sovereignty to make our own medical decisions about how we're going to live our lives. We don't need any organization to come around and do that. So I urge everybody, please call your senators as soon as possible, because it is imperative that we stop this thing. This is absolutely ridiculous, because like I said, this is just a foot in the door. If they get their foot in the door, there's no telling where the rules and power and what we're going to have to follow 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. If we allow it in, then it's just going to escalate into something even worse. So we'll see you guys on Friday. I don't have the schedule with me, so I don't know who we've got coming on, but I just can't thank everybody enough for the support. And, every little thing that you can do to help us just helps us to get the word out even more. $5 here or there. And I mean, it just makes a huge difference. But sharing, we're going to make a lot of clips out of this, and just share these clips and get them out to everybody. But we'll be back on Friday. And I just want to say thank you for the support and following us. And we're happy. We're happy to do everything we do to just keep getting this information out. Thanks, everybody.